depends on the actual type of apartments. So if it was in an area that a ton of luxury apartments, I'd be a lot more excited about buying a property of this size. As we mentioned a few following Fridays back, you can offer that luxury experience without the luxury cost. But in a low income area, it kind of scares me a little bit because at the end of the day, and this is something I was going to get into that I noticed, and again, this could just be a coincidence and a one-time thing. But when I was looking at the comps in this area, there's so many apartments that it seems like the rents aren't based on like a square footage. They're just based on just a one bed versus a two bed. Because I did 6 comps, and 5 of them were are essentially exactly what our property is going to be like once it's done. And then the sixth comp is basically like the market leader, so it's the nicest property in the area. And all the rents were basically the same for the 1 beds and the 2 beds, even though the really nice one, the units were way bigger. So when you look at the dollar per square foot, I think the average for the 1 bedrooms ended up being like $1.30 something. But for this property, the really nice one, since the units were like 200 square feet bigger than all the other ones, the dollar per square foot was something along the lines of like $1.10 or maybe even lower. So I didn't even know what to even think about that. And I still really don't know what to think about that.
Yeah, and you got pros and cons with being in an area that has a lot of apartments in it already, and people go to an area just to shop a lot of different apartments. Pro is you get more drive-by traffic and walk-ins because they're shopping your apartment community, or they're shopping other apartment communities that are next door to you, and then they just go shop yours as well. And then the con is the pricing, because you're competing with a bunch of other apartments in that immediate area, and that could drive your price down because it's so competitive. A solution is to offer a look and lease, a special, when you have an apartment community in an area that is has a lot of other competition. And the look and lease special works as the following way: you you offer a special to someone who comes in and looks at the property and leases it that day. So assuming that you're able to get their approval done within that period of time, then if they sign the lease, or if they sign a commitment to lease at that time whenever they're there, then you give them some sort of concession, whether it's half off the first month's rent or something else that you and your team come up with. But you really need to be focused on, not saying you, Theo, but just as investors in general, we need to be focused on converting the walk-ins to actual to become residents, because that's your advantage. So you want to play up your advantage as much as possible. So really the key is on that conversion and increasing that conversion rate, because then if you're increasing the conversion rate, then you're enjoying all the pros of living in that area, or having apartment community in that area with other large apartment communities, and you're mitigating the downside of that.
Yeah, and that's something we would definitely have to implement at this property if we were to buy it, because there's just so many apartments that, as you mentioned, they're going to come and they're going to look at 10 different apartments, and who knows what they're going to do to choose which one they're going to pick. So that's great advice. Now the problem with this property is that it's owned by like one of those owner operators. So
No
something.
management fees, right?
Well, no, I mean, a lot of problems. No management fees. Very disorganized. T12. They've lumped in capex with maintenance and repairs. So it was took a while to pull all of those out to actually figure out what the actual maintenance and costs were and what they were. Them renovating units, but they have usually for apartments there's not a price set. It's just dictated by the market. Whereas since this is a smaller, 80 unit, not necessarily smaller, but in the grand scheme of things, apartments are 150, 200 units, and it's an owner operator. They have a number in mind of what they want, and it's got a list price. And I know cap rates. I'm not basing my purchase price off of the cap rate, but I was just curious to see what the cap rate would be based off of their purchase price and the in-place operating income and net operating income. And it's 4.75% in a market that's like a 6.5% cap rate. So that's 6.5 million versus $4.75 million purchase price. And if for underwriting, the deal makes sense around a 5.25 million. So the last thing I need to do is hear back from our lender, which he actually called me right before we went live. So I'm going to call him back to see what the debt quote is going to be, just a ballpark estimate.
What mortgage broker are you going with? Mark Belsky?
Yep. Yeah. And once I get that, I'll plug that in my cash flow calculator and get the final number. And, if they want 6.5 million and we can only pay 5.25 million, we're going to offer 5.25 million and see what happens.